Well, I was originally against this theory, but after the new chapter, I am convinced Kid is the clone of Rox the Xebec. Give the channel a subscribe and let's begin. Stick around until the end, I swear this will make sense. Kid is important. Oda originally planned for him to be more important than Law. But because the fanbase liked Law so much, he ended up getting far more screen time, or more accurately, panel time, compared to Kid. But Kid is about to become relevant again after the flashback, and here's why. The manga flashback at the bar, where Rox and Roger meet, took place 40 to 39 years ago. That means 38 years ago from the current timeline we reach God Valley. An event, I believe, was a trap, specifically designed to kill Rox. Rox had become a huge problem for the world government. This guy had done everything. Killed an admiral, conquered an island, and even visited Imu directly in the flower room. So far, the only other character who has done that is Sabo. And it took nearly half the top officers of the Revolutionary Army for him to sneak in. Rox, on the other hand, did it solo. That made him threat number one to the world government. No wonder they asked Herald to kill him. Not only that, but we know he and Herald would meet again at God Valley. But here's something significant. 39 years ago, Mads was established by Lufeld, the Underworld Emperor. Since the years line up with current events in One Piece, and since Rox was the de facto leader of Hachinosu, the literal hub of the underworld and pirates, and had mafia boss Don Marlon as one of his crewmates, I can't imagine him not knowing about Mads and especially Vegapunk. What if Rox actually met Vegapunk and either volunteered or traded his DNA in exchange for information? I know it sounds far-fetched, but hear me out. People underestimate Rox, if that's even possible. Except for actually finding the One Piece, Rox basically did everything. But there's no way he managed all of that. No way he knew about Imu, without some inside information. Let's be real, only a select few even know Imu exists. Think about it. Dragon has been fighting the world government for over 30 years. Probably since God Valley, and yet he knew nothing about Imu. So how did a pirate know? How could Rox promise his crew that he would show them what was at the top of the red line? How did he know about Herald and the legendary devil fruit? Because he wasn't just some violent pirate. I believe that 39 to 38 years ago, before he died at God Valley, Rox met Vegapunk and, in exchange for knowledge, gave him his DNA. And Vegapunk did what Vegapunk does best, analyzed it, researched it, and, hoping that Rox really was special, created a clone. Yes, I believe Eustass Kid is the clone of Rox the Xebec. The biggest clue came in chapter 1158, where Roger met Rox in Shaki's bar. Roger called Rox a porcupine. And out of all the characters in One Piece, Roger and Luffy operate on similar brainwaves. They think alike, act alike, and even speak alike. That's why when Luffy called Kid Jaggy because of his spiked hair, it was basically the same as Roger calling Rox a porcupine. And then there's this. Kid once said, if you give it long enough, even mountains can be worn down by rain. Compare that with Rox, who said, there is no such thing as power that lasts forever. The parallels are too strong to ignore. Vegapunk named his satellites Punk 01 through Punk 06. He even named his database Punk Records. And of course he has Punk in his own name. I think the word funk that Queen uses may have even originated from Vegapunk back when they were working together in Mads. But here's the key, Kid also uses Punk. Look at his attacks. Punk Gibson, Punk Rotten, Punk Cornadillo, Damned Punk. Just like Vegapunk, Kid also wears goggles, even when he was just a child. And even back then, he was tinkering with inventions. We can see it in the robot he's holding in the flashback. More importantly, we know Kid had no family based on his clothing and background. That means he was either an orphan or somehow placed in the South Blue with no clear origin. Then there's Pankrotten, a form that is basically a spitting image of Rox the Xebec. Even the scar across the left eye mirrors Rox. And here's where things get even more interesting. Vegapunk named his satellites with numbers: Punk 01 Shaka, Punk 02 Lilith, Punk 03 Edison, and so on. Kid, meanwhile, labeled his laser cannon Damned Punk with 07 written on it. And if there's one thing Vegapunk is obsessed with, it's lasers. He installed them in pacifistas, seraphims, and countless other inventions. Vegapunk also created mechanical beasts, and one of them looks almost identical to Kid. There were 7 mechanical beasts in total, and Kid himself is associated with the number 07. Coincidence? Maybe, but it fits a pattern. Beyond those clues, the appearance similarities are obvious, maybe even more so than with Blackbeard. Both Rox and Kid have that wild spiky hair, capes, and similar outfits. And personality-wise, they're the same too. Hot-headed, but far smarter than they first appear, never hesitating to take action. And here's the real kicker. With the current Rox the Xebec flashback happening in the manga, it's almost guaranteed we'll see Kid again. The stage is perfectly set for his return. We know Rox was killed at God Valley, most likely by Figureland Garling. That's how his sword ended up with Figureland Shamrock. And when Rox first appeared in chapter 1154, the opening panel title read, "Can't Even Die." Sure, this could be interpreted as Loki's tragic backstory, but it also works perfectly as a hint at Rox's legacy living on, through his clone Kid. And don't forget the bigger picture. With Med's ties to the underworld and Vegapunk's personal ties to Dragon, it's highly likely that we might even see the meeting between Rox and Vegapunk. Also, it's not confirmed that Kid is truly dead. In fact, I'd argue that he and his crew were simply washed away, possibly to Elbaf, maybe even into the realm of the dead. Since Figureland was the one who orchestrated Rox's death and the elders ordered Vegapunk's assassination, Kid now has every reason to settle the score with both the elders and the Holy Knights. And let's not forget Shanks. Kid has already clashed with him twice, and Shanks ruined his plans both times. You know what they say, the third time's the charm. That gives Kid even more reason to go after the Figureland family in particular. We know Shamrock went back to the Holy Land to settle matters there, but since the Holy Knights can literally teleport with the Abyss Mark, it wouldn't be unrealistic if Figureland Shamrock or even Garling himself showed up again, especially now when even Imu is making moves. Now let's bring Loki into the picture. I predicted that he would cut off Figureland Garling's hand. Why? Because Loki is a parallel to Fenrir, the wolf who was chained in Norse mythology. And the celestial dragons are associated with Norse gods. Shanks is similar to Tyr, the god who lost his hand to Fenrir. So imagine this, Loki and Kid teaming up, cutting off Garling's or Shamrock's hand, making them symbolically even more similar to Shanks. That would be wild from both a lore and narrative perspective. And remember, Loki always wanted to join the Rox pirates, but he couldn't, simply because he was born in the wrong era. Now, what if he finally gets that chance? Not by joining his idol directly, but by joining the clone of Rox himself, Kid. Luffy asked Kid for the alliance, of which Kid was very skeptical. On Elbaf, Luffy asked Loki to join his crew, but Loki straight up refused, even got angry. But what if Kid asks Loki to join up with him? One Piece is very cyclical. Rox wanted Herald to join him, but their friendship ended on bad terms. What if this time it will be different? Herald's son Loki joining Rox's clone, Kid, to finally reignite Rox's original plan to topple the world government. Because, let's be honest, if Kid comes back right now, he won't immediately be a top player on his own. But if he returns alongside Loki, That changes everything. Suddenly, Kid's comeback has weight, legacy, and power. If you made it to the end, don't forget to subscribe. I originally planned to release a Sanji video this week, but it's turning out to be as long as 2 full videos, so I've decided to push it back a little. In the meantime, share your ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks so much for watching.